Okay, so this is JD Vance's interview after the entire incident in the Oval Office, where Zelensky came in and contributed to making the talks go sideways, so to speak, and eventually messing up the deal that was supposed to have been signed. And let's watch it.
Mr. Vice
Great.
President, thank you for being with us.
Good to see you, man.
Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Let's go back to the Oval Office Friday.
Yep.
From your perspective.
Yeah, great TV. As the president said.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, people were saying things like they couldn't believe that a head of state would act that way. Let me make you understand something. It doesn't matter. So far, they didn't come to physical blows, and they didn't severely embarrass themselves. Those are the two things that they did not do. Okay, they had an argument, but that's what happens during negotiations. People just got to see what happens during negotiations. And luckily, Trump can get away with it because Trump was an entertainer. And even Zelensky can get away with it to some extent because Zelensky was an entertainer. So even though some people are mad and say, "Oh my God, this is not a way that things should have been done," blah blah blah. Trump is immune to that. Let's be honest. Trump is immune to that. So that wasn't much of a problem, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So we have a 45-minute press conference, and the president normally does this. I mean, I've seen this now 3 or 4 times with foreign leaders where he likes to bring the media in, likes to have a conversation, but answer questions with the press. As you know, he's very open with reporters. And what I noticed is that for the first 25, 30 or so minutes, he tried to sort of bend over backwards to be gracious and kind to Zelensky, even when Zelensky was kind of needling him, even when Zelensky was saying things that I thought were untrue. The president just tried to be diplomatic, right?
This is true. Now, I have to agree because I watched it and I was like, why is he doing this? He even brought some papers to show Trump and everything like that. And Trump was like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's okay. Trump was trying to be understanding that, this is an ally, blah, blah, blah. To me, Zelensky was kind of insufferable in a way, right? So if you see the altercation of what happened much later, you would think that Trump decided to rag on Zelensky for no reason, but that's not actually what happened. Okay, Zelensky was kind of pushing it. Let's be honest.
I think that's his natural instinct in that situation. And then when it really went off the rails, of course, is when I asked, or you had a Polish journalist who asked a question, the president answered it, and then I answered it. And then something about my answer just really set Zelensky off. So then he came at me.
So you're blaming yourself.
And then I went back at him,
Right.
and what I tried to do originally was actually try to diffuse the situation a little bit, because I'm like, we're having this meeting. Obviously, there are 100 television cameras here. Let's try to have this conversation in private. And then the president, as we kept on going back and forth, I tried again to say, well, maybe we should have this conversation in private. And the president was like, nope, actually, I don't want to have it in private anymore. I want to have this actual conversation in public for the American people to see. And I do think that there was just a certain sense of
I somewhat disagree. That's not what quite happened. What actually happened was that JD Vance, gave his own speech, so to speak, and it wasn't as antagonistic, but that kind of antagonized Zelensky, who decided to attack the vice president of the United States in the Oval Office. And Trump didn't even get involved yet. Trump kept quiet. Trump didn't say anything. Trump only became infuriated when Zelensky began to say that Russia is not really a problem to the US right now, but they will soon be. And the euro is going to feel pain because of Russia. And Trump got mad at that point. Before then, Trump was pretty much chill, was trying to avoid the situation, was letting JD Vance talk and everything. Then when Zelensky said that, Trump was like, bitch, what the fuck you think you're talking? Yeah, Trump went off at that point. So, Trump didn't just say he wanted to defuse his. Trump didn't enter in immediately. No, Trump was quiet until Zelensky decided to say a specific thing, and then Trump decided to go in on Zelensky. That's what happened.
There was a lack of respect. There was a certain sense of entitlement. And most importantly, look, we can look past all of that stuff, but the president has set a very clear goal for his administration. He wants the killing to stop. And I think that it's very important that President Zelensky and, of course, President Putin, too, they've both got to come to the negotiating table. And that's ultimately where things broke apart. I really don't care what President Zelensky says about me or anybody else, but he showed a clear unwillingness to engage in the peace process that President Trump has said is the policy of the American people and of their president. That's the real breakdown. Is I think Zelensky wasn't yet there, and I think frankly now still isn't there, but I think he'll get there eventually. He has to.
That was beautiful. That was a beautiful breakdown of the situation. And he said it, and I agree. I don't even think Trump cares as much that Zelensky tried to challenge him, or that I don't think JD Vance cares that Zelensky tried to, you know, gotcha moment. You know that Trump has been through more of this than most people can care about. Trump cares about results, so Trump will not really be mad. I mean, Trump has been attacked by people that are now in his administration. I mean, JD Vance himself used to be anti-Trump at some point. Now he's Trump's vice president. So Trump doesn't really care too much about whether you hated him or you don't like him or you like him. Trump cares about results. And that's what I think politicians are lacking. Politicians are way more worried about political stances than actual results. They're worried about looking strong or trying to act like they're standing strong for democracy, even though they are funding a war that is technically removing democracy from Ukraine and forcing Ukrainian men to be forcefully pushed into the military and into the war zone in a meat grinder to be killed. It's kind of weird that they are talking about democracy when they are pushing for a war like that to continue. Now, Zelensky, obviously, I can understand his perspective. If he loses the war, not only is he going to be voted out as an unpopular president, he's only going to be voted out as an unpopular president, right? But also his life might be in danger. So I understand his position, but you have to understand that in nowhere is this any good for Ukraine. In nowhere is having the war continue any good for Ukraine. It's better that Ukraine even gives up some land than to completely lose more land without any much benefit. Because let's make it very clear. There's very little capability that Europe has to enter, to keep funding Ukraine, to keep going to war with Russia. There's very little capability, and they have shown it. I just think recently, I think uh, Steimer from UK decided to push for 2 point something billion dollars to help Ukraine, but that's at least that's 1 week of war, you know, 1 week. That's what's going to happen. There's nothing much is going to go from there. Okay, so the Europe is not really good at that, you know. So it's kind of weird that the one superpower that's supposed to be on your side, you are trying to act like you're the boss. Like your words are what matter. Like you can say whatever the hell you want to say and get away with it. And they're like, who the hell do you think you are? You know, it's really irritating to me that, you know, he blew it. He pretty much blew it because, from what I understand, the deal was supposed to drag Ukraine and America closer by having America invest in Ukraine's mineral resources, right? In Ukraine's country. And so when American legs on the ground in Ukraine, they can start mining for resources and stuff like that. That would pretty much glue the economies together. And that will also dissuade Russia from attacking because American individuals are in Ukraine at that point in time. American workers are in Ukraine. So they want to attack Ukraine. There's going to be a problem, right? There's going to be an issue. It's almost going to be an act of war, but it's not going to be an act of war the same way it will be if American troops were in Ukraine, from what I can understand, because that would obviously be NATO, in that situation. So it was kind of like a go around when it came to this situation, but it is what it is. Apparently, Zelensky did not like that security guarantee and decided to fuck up and mess up the situation. But it's all good. I think it was caught up by the moment and emotion, and you cannot really have too much emotion taking over your brain cells when it comes to negotiations, especially when it comes to war and the death of people. When you're sending people to go die, you can't be too much in your feelings, okay? Because you're sending people to go die, and that is always going to be unpopular. So you have to find a way to make sure that at least you showcase the attitude that you're not trying to keep sacrificing people of your country while you're preaching that you are standing for democracy. Because it looks like a scam. You're forcing your people to go die, and yet you're saying you're trying to protect them. You're trading people's lives for a piece of land. That's basically what you're doing. It's okay.
My understanding is he tried to get back in, or tried to stay a number of times, and then made numerous calls to come back. Is that true?
I don't know about numerous calls, but they certainly made at least one request to come back in and continue the conversation. The president was like, look, first of all, they were disrespectful. And second of all, what are we even going to talk about? They've shown a clear unwillingness to discuss the peaceful settlement that President Trump is trying to bring to the situation. I think a lot of Americans are sort of, it's useful to step back and ask ourselves, what is the actual plan here? You can't just fund the war forever. The American people won't stand for it. And by the way, Sean, if you look at European opinion polls, the Europeans aren't going to stand forever for it either. We need to bring this thing to a peaceful settlement. The president was trying to do that. He'll continue to try to do that. But you've got to have two to tango. You've got to have a negotiating partner in the Ukrainians who recognize that, of course, they have their views. And of course, they're not always going to agree with us. But they've got to participate in the conversation. They weren't willing to do that on Friday, so the president said, send him home.
He said today that the war he expects will go on a very long time. I don't know where he's going to get the money to fund that war. I have my doubts that Europe will fund the war to the level that Biden and Harris were funding it. And then the issue now has come up whether or not this administration will continue to offer money and arms for this war to continue. Because without America, I would argue the president was right in saying they have no cards.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I think our European friends, frankly, are being really, they're doing a disservice to the Ukrainians because their own populations are saying, we're not going to fund this war indefinitely. The American people are saying, we don't want to fund the war indefinitely. So the only thing that is in the best interest of America, of Russia, of Ukraine, and of Europe is to bring this thing to a close. What happened, Sean, is you have Zelensky. He goes to Europe, and a lot of our European friends puff him up. They say, Europe.
Yeah. Europe cannot fund the war indefinitely. That's not gonna happen. This is another thing that annoys me, right? I understand that sometimes you have to save face as a politician. You have to go out there and say, "Hey, we stand by democracy against aggressors." Stuff. I get it. You have to do that sometimes. It's politics, but when it's unrealistic, it's unrealistic. You're not gonna fund this war indefinitely. That's not gonna happen. And how are you going to do that without sacrificing the very people that you're supposed to be saving? Europe doesn't want to go to war with Russia because that is Article 14, right? Is it Article 14 or Article 5? I forget. But that's going to be World War III, basically speaking, right? Unless Russia caves, which is unlikely to happen. So if Europe doesn't want to go to direct war with Russia, why are they wasting the lives of civilians in Ukraine by persuading Zelensky and making him think that they can keep fighting forever? It can't. He doesn't have the manpower to keep fighting forever. He doesn't have the willing troops that are willing to go into. Many of these people are fleeing right now. They don't want to keep fighting. It's just not feasible for them. So why is it that Europe keeps pushing this nonsense that somehow they can keep fighting forever when they can't? And then they give him they give him false they give him false confidence, making him think that is the leader of Ukraine that would be undefeated and would conquer Russia and push Russia back to. It's not going to happen that way. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen that way. So yes, I would in theory like an idea whereby Russia can be pushed back and Russia can be made to stop being an aggressor. Although it is also a good argument that Ukraine also contributed to this, and America kind of like set up Ukraine to be a proxy to in order to attack Russia, or in order to get Russia to attack and to like keep funding the war to kind of bleed Russia off of its ammunition, which is not really working at the moment. Although the Russian economy is kind of feeling it. So I guess it kind of worked in a twisted way, but these things are not sustainable. And I think that the military industrial complex of America, they are trying to find a way to be more relevant. And so they are lobbying for this to continue. But a lot of high stakes situations are just ignored by powerful people because they're too greedy and looking for their bottom line, how to increase their profit from war. They did not realize that if World War III breaks out, none of them will survive. They think that their bunkers is going to protect them from a nuclear fallout. And so they can't really see a reason why they should go for a peaceful alternative, which is kind of sad.
You're a freedom fighter. You need to keep fighting forever. Well, fighting forever with what? With whose money, with whose ammunition, and with whose lives? The president is actually taking a much more realistic perspective and saying this can't go on forever. We can't fund this thing forever. The Ukrainians can't fight forever. So let's bring this thing to a peaceful settlement.
Okay, I'm going to stop there from now. If you want to watch the rest of the clip, you can go on to Fox News, I believe. And yeah, that's my 2 cents in this. And I will see you guys later.